It's your weekly dose of Live Bold and Boss Up podcast time. Thank you for joining. This episode is near and dear to my heart. We get to speak to Renee Vaughn, who's not only the president of Williams Consulting Group, but I originally met her back when I joined the Board of Fellows over at the University of Tampa. She has been the first lady over there for nearly 30 years. She has also been so involved in the community and professional organizations like Hospice of Women in Philanthropy, League of Exceptional Women, the Girl Scouts of West Coast Florida. She's received so many awards from these groups, like she received the prestigious Parke Wright III Award from the Leadership Tampa Alumni. I mean, the list goes on. She's very humble too. She won't tell you all the things she's accomplished or done. So we get to pick her brain. I hope you enjoy, because we certainly did. So thank you, Renee. I'm so glad to have you on Live Bold and Boss Up podcast. Thank you so much for honoring us and being here.
I really like the idea of live bold and boss. So maybe offline, you'll have to tell me more about that.
We will. Yeah. It took us a while, I think, to come up with a name.
It took a lot of throwing different names out there to come up with that one.
Yeah.
It just stuck. We liked it. So
I'll have to try to rise to the occasion. Bold and boss.
You have
think you
certainly
do.
bossed up, and you're still bossing up to this day, which is why you're here and on the podcast, because we wanted to ask you for your expertise on so many different things. One of which you've been a CEO, creator of a public relations firm. And we don't talk about that much. Like in the years that I've known you, we've never really talked about your business and how you created it and why public relations. And we've never chatted about that on the podcast. I thought, what a perfect time to start. What made you get into that?
That's your question?
Yeah.
When I worked for Mayor Greco for 8 years during his administration, and I was the go-to person for new leaders in the community. So if the CEO of Walther Industries moved into town, the mayor would say, get him in the crew of Gasparilla. And different requests would come to his office, and he would just make me the natural interface. And I was his representative to all of the cultural institutions in town. So it made me a board member of every cultural and the zoo, the aquarium, Performing Arts Center, Tampa Theater, Henry B. Plant Museum. And I interacted with, that's what I did for a living, was sit on their boards and help them recruit new board members, help them with their budgets. And after I left the mayor's office, someone actually even recommended to me, they were like, why don't you help new people who come to town and want to know what club to join and how do they get better media exposure? So I very hesitantly, I might say, because I had no idea how to run a business, and I worked for government, and it was my calling in life to work for government. But I didn't have to charge anyone for my advice and my services.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor would just say, make this happen, and I would go make it happen. I didn't have to put a price tag on it, and I didn't have to sell it. So opening my own company was a pretty rude awakening to get out and market myself. So I had to kind of use what I was selling just for my own marketing and growth of the company.
Wow. And I feel like you were such a natural at it. It sounds like that piece of it just comes naturally, but starting a business, yeah, is something that, I feel like so many people want to start a business, but they don't know how. What is one thing that you learned by starting your own business that maybe surprised you?
Well, when I started my company, you didn't do everything online like payroll or work with the IRS. Everything was paper. And I went to IRS school. Painful,
Wow.
painful experience.
Yeah, that sounds
like it.
awful.
But like one of the first things you want to do is kind of learn how to pay yourself, right? So,
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
important.
so I did figure that out, but I found that it's a lot. It's a lot to start your own business because you market during the day and you fulfill at night. And, I grew fairly quickly in the first couple of years, but I will say this, I went to Sandler training
Oh, Sandler's the best.
so
Yeah.
that I could figure out how to look someone in the eye and tell them they were going to pay me $5,000 a month for me to do it,
Mhm.
and not back up. So that really helped to become a better salesperson. And really, when you well, at the University of Tampa, where Ron was president, they created a sales institute because that skill is really one of the most important skills, no matter what you do,
Right.
because you have to be able to sell yourself. You have to be confident.
Mhm.
You have to be able to discover the pain that that company or individual has before you can make any changes. So Sandler was a great boost in learning with others when we role played and practice, and many of the things that I learned I actually used with my clients.
Mhm.
Nice. What were some of the big public relations issues that you came across in your years of serving?
I did a lot of things at first. I worked with some nonprofits, but what I really found my niche was new CEOs who came to town who didn't really know anyone and some of them didn't even know their staff, and they wanted to have a higher profile. Businesses either want to stay under the wire or over the wire. And most businesses are very comfortable under the wire. But let's say you're leveraging to sell at some point in time. Under the wire isn't going to raise your price. So I worked with a lot of CEOs who wanted both their employees and them and their company to be recognized throughout the community for different roles, philanthropy, for just engagement, and to grow their customer base.
So PR, because I feel like being a new company, we've done a little bit of PR, but I feel like not a ton. Like, why is it important other than selling? Like, you want to sell the company down the road. Is it important or is it?
So, yes, I mean, banks are a dime a dozen. How do you distinguish yourself? You're a commodity. And you have to be very clever to touch your clients. The good thing about banks is it's painful to change banks, but that doesn't mean you're a great bank that your customer loves.
Mhm.
It just means it's too painful to try another bank.
Right.
And banks can do better than that. They really can. So I never took on two banks at a time because I really thought that was a conflict of interest. But I worked with a few banks over the years to really help them leverage their position in the community. And then when new bankers were transferred into Tampa, I worked with them in the case of a woman client. She wanted to be engaged in the Businesswoman of the Year. She wanted to be on particular boards that she was excited about and that had high profiles, again, to raise their profile. And quite honestly, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, especially working with employees. I found that the companies who invested in their employees' engagement in the community. So it's not all about them, but hey, Charles over there, he wants to get involved in junior achievement. Can you help with that? And the truth is, you could do it on your own, but if someone else can do it for you and do it well and position you in a highlight with that organization,
Mhm.
then I think that's very strong.
Right. That sounds so simple, but super effective, right? Just having your employees get out in the community and be involved in things that they're passionate about is a form of like public relations, right?
Well, for your company, of
Yeah.
course it is.
So, you're very involved in the community. You're on lots of boards. How do you balance it all? Like what advice would you give someone who, wants to do that or get more involved?
I'm glad you asked that, because my favorite and only response to a younger person that wants to get involved in the community is to tell them to do a leadership program. If they're young, they should do Tampa Connection. Leadership Tampa, excellent program. Leadership Tampa Bay, there's a Leadership of Hillsborough. And the one that is the best is the one that you can actually get into, first of all, because they're very competitive. And secondly, it depends on your focus. If it's regional, you would want to focus on Leadership Tampa Bay.
Mhm.
But I always tell people, other than marrying Ron, it was the smartest thing I ever did.
Aw.
Because I will run into people, like even county commissioners, who would say, "I know everything about the community. I don't want to take Leadership Tampa." And I'm like, really? It isn't about you, because you experience each of those program days with 50 other people.
Mhm.
And what they collectively bring to the table is more than you could get anywhere else you go. It's
Right.
almost like a school, going back to school for a year and having these 50 people who learn about you, and they can help show you where to get engaged, because you don't get into Leadership Tampa or any leadership program unless you have some level of community engagement.
Right.
So you bring 50 people who, and that's really how I found some of the places I got involved in, especially the Board of Fellows at the University of Tampa.
Really?
They, someone from Leadership Tampa was engaged and they invited me. And that was, I have to say, 30 years ago, that when I graduated from Leadership Tampa, and I just finished my 30th year at the Board of Fellows.
Wow. I'm glad you said that, because we're big supporters of leadership groups like that too. We were both in Tampa Connection, and even like I'm on the board now, so I go to all the class days and I learn something new every single time. Although I've seen the same day, multiple times, I learn something new every single time.
Well, that's because the world changes.
Right,
And with
yeah.
technology, it changes
Constantly,
weekly.
yeah.
So a year later, it's like, they didn't do any of that
Right.
last year, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I've met so many people that way.
Right. Is that how you naturally got into mentoring all the individuals you mentor?
The mentoring story is interesting. I know I've shared this with you before, but when I first graduated from college, so in college, I was first generation student, and I had to work full time the whole time I was in undergraduate and graduate school. And I'm not getting my violin out. And, it was pretty exciting to graduate from school debt free.
Yeah.
And with my master's degree, but I never had a chance to do a lot of the things, the co-curricular and extracurricular things that campuses offer, which is too bad. It's a miss. And I learned that with my years at the university, that that's a big miss. But as soon as I got out of college, I wanted to volunteer, and ended up volunteering at the Suicide and Crisis Center in Dallas. And they have an 8-week extensive program in training you how to be a phone counselor.
Wow.
And the most critical part is it teaches you how to listen and how to process what you're hearing, not what you're thinking.
Mhm.
And it teaches you to be selfless you talk to someone and they say, I'm so stressed, I'm going to have surgery next week. Oh, I can tell you all about it. I had surgery and it's all of a sudden all about the other person. When all that person wanted to hear was, wow, that's pretty scary. You must be a little worried about that.
Mhm.
Bingo, sigh of relief. Someone heard the fear, the fright, the anxiety. And so once you learn that skill, it's kind of hard to turn it off. I mean, you can forget it. But I found that through mentoring, I mean, here I am 24, you don't want my advice. Trust me. But I could listen. And I learned from that. And I grew from that. So it really kind of became very natural. And it's my nature. It's just part of my nature to want to listen and help. And it's so funny, it isn't often until years later, and that's kind of what's happened in this past year. And as people have come out and said, 8 years ago, you sat down with me and talked to me about my career, and it's the only reason I'm where I am today. But I never knew that. So you can really make a difference in the lives of others. And today's younger people, they think they know everything, and they don't want to hear it, what they don't know from their parents. So I have a lot of students. I still keep up with many who have graduated. They'll call to let me know what they're doing, especially when they're very proud. And they'll call when they don't know what they're doing and they're very frightened.
Wow. That must be like so rewarding for you, knowing that you've helped so many people and guided so many people, and they still come back to you whenever they have the good things or the bad things that they
Yeah,
want.
it's really rewarding.
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, a lot of my current board of fellows, board members, they still to this day are like, yes, Renee's my mentor. I mean, and these are grown adults that have had decades of experience and like marriages and divorces and career changes and all the things. And they're like, Renee is a huge part of my life. It's really amazing to hear that and to like hear, just how you've impacted so many people. And that's so beautiful to hear that you went to like a suicide crisis center and worked there, because I didn't know that. And that's such a beautiful piece to it all, because you're right, that taught you how to listen, which I think is now I'm learning currently that that's a really an important piece or important task to learn. I'm taking it back to so maybe I'm not learning this yet, but we're reading a book by Chris Voss, who's an FBI negotiator, and we're learning about basically how to negotiate, but he's actually teaching us, no, you actually have to listen, because a lot of the times you're assuming, especially when you're a smart individual and you know a lot of things, and you are assuming that you know what this person wants, but he's like, no, you need to like clear your mind and just hear what they're saying and understand where are they coming from and how are they feeling.
Exactly.
So it was like textbook, literally, that you brought that up. It was amazing to me. Yeah.
What's next for you? I feel like you've done so much. What's next?
I'm channeling that right now. I don't know. Opportunities have just sort of fallen into place at the right time. And I am still very involved with some groups, and I find that very rewarding. And there's a value add there for both of us. So I don't know. Ron and I have been going 1,000,000 miles an hour for 16 years since we've been married. So I think we're going to have some downtime and kind of time together and discover
nice.
Tampa. A friend of mine asked me, she goes, what's one of the first things you're going to do? And I said, I've never walked the river walk.
Really?
Like, shame on me, but when?
Right. I mean, you're literally busy all the time.
But I'm going to wait till it gets cooler.
Yeah.
But and I love the Dolly Museum, and I see exhibits come and go, and I'm like, didn't see that. So
Mhm.
there'll be some rediscovery of our own backyard.
Fun.
And I think that, and we'll still do some traveling, and partly it'll be what he figures out to do too, because he's been approached about doing some consulting, and maybe that's something we would do together. But I am so confident there's something there, and
sure.
I know that when I see it, I'll know it.
Mhm.
I love your energy and drive to just for your next chapter, for the next thing. You know, you're eager to see that next part of life.
Well, you have to be open to it, you know. It's not going to knock on your door until you answer. You
Mhm.
have to kind of keep your eyes and heart open to see if that's something that really resonates with you.
I also love that you said checking out Tampa Bay, like our own backyard, because maybe someone can't travel, or, we have so many things right here to do and see that we don't even think about or know about. So yeah, the Dolly Museum, I haven't been to the new one. And how long has it been there? Like,
We went to a
Oh.
few, the first the Van Gogh immersive exhibit, and we're like, why don't we do this more often?
Mhm.
It's new restaurants to try, and yeah, so I think we'll do some of that.
Yeah, there's so much. Well, go ahead,
Oh, I
Ash.
just had one final question before we wrap up. Y- just a, I guess, word of advice or just some wisdom from Renee Vaughn on, what can someone take away, whether they're a business owner, right, or someone that needs a mentor. What is something that we can leave with the listener today that can help them get to their next journey, their next path, kind of get them over maybe what they're dealing with now? What's some advice that you would give?
I'm going to sound kind of woo woo, but I think one thing none of us realize how important it is, and many don't know how to do it. And that's really to stop and meditate, to kind of, you take a shower in the morning, right? To kind of clear the body. And
Mhm.
that's a great opportunity to clear your mind, to kind of dump any trash and think about what's ahead. And I really recommend that to all of my mentees, and they're like, meditate. And I'm
Right.
like, yeah, yeah, it can be reading a poem. It can be, I have a library of truth, I call it. And every day I take out a different book and just open it. And certain books like Eckhart Tolle or Lee Harris, they lend itself to just or Rumi. They just lend themselves to a point of reflection each day. And I think it's really important. And the other thing I would say, and people roll their eyes, but I know everyone who hears this, including you, is the one thing we have forgotten how to do is touch each other. Email doesn't work, text doesn't work. But how good do you feel when someone sends you a snail mail note?
Mhm.
And it doesn't take, I have a practice of, if I've just been thinking about someone or worried about them, I can text it, I can send it, but when they open it and they have it in their hand, it's a big deal. And I always tell clients, you have to distinguish yourself as a commodity. You have to choose how you're going to reach your clients, your constituents in a way that they really thought you thought about them.
Mhm.
And or you sent them something that they're going to put on their desk for a few days or maybe for a long time. And that's something I'm very not religious about, but I make it a point to let you don't know what's next, but you know, if you didn't send that note when you thought about it, that person may not be there, but you may not either. And so you could say, well, that was meant to be, but maybe not. Maybe you just have to let people know what you're thinking and that you care about them.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like you were like really speaking to me. I was like, yes, like that was, I think, speaking to a lot of people.
And it only takes a few lines.
Yeah.
And, you know, if someone takes you to lunch, you text them and you're gone.
Yeah.
But if 2 days later they open this note that said, you just have to read a fun hump day. Thank you. Right? That's
Yeah.
1-2 lines that just says, I made an effort to let you know how much I appreciate that you took me to lunch.
Right.
I love
That's
that.
beautiful. Words of wisdom.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you for sharing that with our guests and us. I think that's, something that we can all learn from and benefit from. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate being included. This was fun.
It
You didn't
was
tell me it
fun.
was going to be so much fun.
Right. You were so worried. So worried.
And until next time.
Live bold and boss up.